I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you about adoption lifecycle management and how you drive value across an SAP program in particular. My name's Simon Davies, and I work for an organisation called Resulting IT. So we are a small consultancy firm based in the northwest of the UK in Warrington. About 80 of us at the moment, but growing very, very quickly. In terms of what we do client-side consulting. So what that means in plain English is we sit alongside clients and protect their interests against systems integrators, software providers, anybody that might wish to take advantage of them. We believe we provide clarity to our customers. We do that by advising them, but also on occasion we'll put delivery people in there to work as if they were a client-side person. Okay? And we've been going for just over 20 years, and then a couple of years ago we had equity funding, and we are growing quite rapidly, primarily in the UK, a little bit in Europe, but more and more in the US. Okay? In terms of what I'm going to cover this morning, I'm going to talk about why adoption and why not change or training or learning, because I am conscious of the environment that we're in and the language that I'm using. So I'm going to talk very specifically about adoption. I'm going to talk then about an ebook that we produced, which covers the 7 sins of adoption. So the things that, in our experience, organisations most frequently get wrong. Adoption is an activity, but I believe it's a process. So I'm going to draw a distinction again between it being an activity and a process. I'm going to pick a client that we worked with and talk about the challenge that was presented to them in terms of driving adoption and how you do that with traditional tools. And then I'm here today with Brendan and the team from Assima, who we work with very closely. And I'm going to finish off my presentation by talking about how we've used Assima on one client, and then just talk about some of the differences and the benefits of using Assima. Okay? So, the reason why adoption, going back to 2018, we're very big on doing original research. So we commissioned a research piece looking at the main drivers of success on SAP programs. So to do that, we commissioned a survey of 100 organizations that had been through SAP transformation programs and asked them what went well and what didn't go quite so well. And we pulled out the themes and the patterns in that. So number one lever for improving success, rather unsurprisingly on an SAP program, was a high focus on adoption. Okay. So if that's the case, so the question is, why do so many transformation programs actually fail? Because they do. So we started to look at what we do differently, because we were already maybe by accident thinking along these lines. But it was thinking differently about the way that we drive adoption and not thinking about it late in the program lifecycle when we think about training and change and communication, but actually embedding it right from day one, the inception of a program. And a lot of the work that we do, we talk about phase 0. So even before the program is a thing, actually embedding adoption into the process. I've got a picture of Henry Ford up there. It's one of my favourites. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So really that's at the heart of what I'm about to say now. There are tools out there, there are technologies out there. I'm just going to encourage you to think slightly differently and challenge yourself to do something different. So, a couple of years back, I pulled together an ebook. It's available for download on our website, called The 7 Sins of Adoption. I'll talk through the 7 sins in a moment, but essentially this was something I pulled together for the UK and Ireland SAP user groups. So they have a special interest group for change and training. So I presented this to their special interest group to promote some discussion about taking adoption more seriously and focusing less on change and training and communications, all of which are important, but only really help support and drive adoption. So, my 7 sins. So there are 3 sins that we most frequently observe around setting the program up for success, right? So they start with poor sponsorship, alignment with strategy, and then a commitment to making the program happen from the organisation. So we'll ask, is this program sponsored? Do you know who your sponsors are? Do they know that they're sponsors? Do they agree that they're sponsors? Are they happy to tell other people that they're sponsors? And the number of times we struggle with that as a concept, and bearing in mind this is the first of the sin, this is where the process starts. The next question we most often ask is, so how is what you're about to embark upon, how does that align with your business strategy? So how does what you're about to spend millions, hundreds of millions on, how does that enable your business strategy over the next 5 years? So we challenge them for alignment, our clients, and say, if you can't clearly show how this enables, then why are you doing it? If we've got sponsorship, if we've got alignment, the next thing that I typically do is pull the team of people that are going to deliver this together, all of the stakeholders, have a workshop and talk about what the program is about, what its mission or vision statement is, what the principles are that we're going to work to, what we're going to commit to as a team of the business, the systems integrator, our business, users themselves, any software providers. I get them to talk about how they'd like to be treated and how they wish to behave. And we capture that typically in a charter that I will old school print off, get the sponsors to sign, scan it, and we have collateral as screensavers, pictures on the wall, that when we go into a workshop and somebody is rude or somebody, you can point at it, right? And say, this is not what we agreed. Okay, so we've got those 3 in place. We now can, I think, engage with the business. We've engaged with senior stakeholders and some of our senior stakeholders around the business, but this is really the point where we're clear on what we're going to do, why we're going to do it, and we've got support. And at that point, we get into the sort of things that people are talking about on the stands around this building in terms of enablement. So how we give people the knowledge and the skills to work with these new systems and processes. So how we train, how we educate, how we provide learning. The next stage is adoption itself. And again, I'm talking about adoption as a process, but also an activity. We can measure adoption. We can look at the metrics pre-go live and say these are typically the sort of volumetrics we get through processes. We can look at them again post-go live and compare and contrast. So there are tools out there that we can use to measure whether business users are actually using the solution. Adaptation. We will go live typically on a program with a big queue of things that didn't quite make the cut, changes that we would love to have made to the solution, but we can't make before go live because we'll delay matters. So adaptation is really about continuous improvement and making the most of the solution based on what our users are telling us when they actually use the solution. Okay. Most importantly on this, although engagement is sort of the meat in the sandwich here, it is happening from top to bottom on this, right? So adoption lifecycle management is about engaging across the life cycle of a program and making sure that you're focused on everything that will drive adoption. Right, I'm going to make some broad sweeping statements here. Projects and programs, in theory, have a business case. And I say in theory because, again, the number of times that I've worked on programs where they can't articulate what the business case is embarrassing. The business case is predicated on delivering benefits. So I'm going to suggest to you that you derive benefits by business users using the new processes and solutions. Now, I know this is really, really basic and noddy, but for people to get the benefit, or the business to get the benefit, we have to use the solution, right? So the conclusion then that we can draw, if it's adopted by the business, we're on our way to delivering some of the benefits. So I think we should be thinking about adoption from day one, from the very beginning of our program, and embedding it in the program to set ourselves up for success. So, to help our users get excited about this new system, I think it would be great if we could actually show them what it looked like, okay? And the most frequently asked question I get is, when will I see the system? Or, that's great, but I've no idea what you're talking about because I've not seen the system yet. The next question is, when am I going to be able to train? When am I going to be able to play with the solution? Is there an environment that I can practice on? The practical reality for the majority of programs is it's really difficult to adopt a system that you've never seen and that you've never had a chance to play with, right? The first opportunity is just before you go live when you are trained. And by that time, I would argue, it's way too late to get hearts and minds and buy-in from the people that are going to use the solution. I'm going to give you a worked example now, and apologies, it's quite a busy slide. This is based on a real-life example, a client of ours in central government. We came in, so this is sort of the last 14 or so months of the program. When we arrived, they were in the middle of design, just partway through design, heading towards build. And there are some terminology on here, and again, please, if I use terminology or acronyms, then please shout out. But explore equals design. Build is where we actually build the solution. SIT, systems integration testing, so where the technical team are testing the solution. 1, 2, 3 means they're going through iterations or phases of system integration testing. And then user acceptance testing, UAT, is where the users themselves actually get their hands on the solution for the first time. Very small block for training, yeah, and then we deploy, okay? So the challenges that this client had was no one had seen the system, right? No one was getting excited because they couldn't even imagine, other than Googling what an S4 system looked like, SAP S4. Other than that, nobody can actually show them the solution because we were still in design and, you know, approaching build. So using Enable Now, which is SAP's own tool, or similar tools like Captivate, Articulate, we can do something, but to capture step-by-step process guides or simulations, you really do need a stable solution. So you're really looking at, on this diagram, into UAT, or even, well, certainly well into SIT or into UAT before you start capturing training content. So there was no suitable place for them to practice because you're only really able to use things like sandboxes where everybody's in there. There's no consistency of data, access is dreadful, you might not have all of the processes set up. So this was a challenge that we had. If I go to the right-hand side of this slide and work backwards, we looked at the tools that the client had got, and they'd got Enable Now and Articulate. And yes, we could start capturing content, but there was a reluctance to do so simply because until we are tested as a solution, anything we capture as a flat screen might need to be reworked, okay? So there's a reluctance to capture it too early. So we have to leave it as late as possible. But we missed this enormous gap. Going back to my point earlier on about driving adoption as early as possible, we miss an opportunity to show people the system as it comes out of design and as it goes into build. We don't want to capture anything in SIT, because we're conscious that we might have to rework it. We leave it to the last moment, and then literally we have to run around for a month, 2 months to create all the content, and then we have a month or 6 weeks to train people. Okay? No opportunity to drive adoption or to practice. So, what we did, working with Assima, was showed them articulate, sorry, Assima, that was a Freudian, wasn't it? Assima train. Assima is quite unique, right? There's nothing quite like it. The reason for that is it's multi-patented and copyrighted. It produces lifelike, ultra-realistic simulations of the solution that it's asked to clone. And clone is the key word. It doesn't screenshot, it actually clones the solution that you point it at. What I mean by that is that you have a launcher that you set up on your machine as you start to record a process. Assima watches everything that is rendered through your browser, and it captures that as an editable clone. Okay? So behind it is a database of everything from words, boxes, fonts, colors, everything that you've browsed over and scrolled up and down, it captures, and when you save it and publish it, it becomes an editable clone. Key then is you can send somebody a link to that clone, which is now a simulation with fairly rudimentary instruction, and they can follow a process and click through. They can scroll up and down, they can hover over boxes, and they behave like they would do on the production system. Okay? Really mind-blowing. If you want to see a demo, they're on the stall just around the corner, and Brendan's here to answer any questions if you've got any. If I just move on, it really is, until you see it, it's very difficult to appreciate just how lifelike and realistic it is. As I said, the guys are on KO1 stand just around the corner, so you can have a look at the solution and have a look at the simulations. Does that come out? So, video on the left is the live system. Video on the right is the Assima clone. So it's not a picture, it's not hotspots, it's not buttons, it looks, feels and reacts exactly like the production system. Now if you go back or think back to my timeline, if we can grab even a rudimentary clone as we've built our first part of a process, or 2 or 3 parts of processes that are not integrated as of yet, but will ultimately be integrated, we can clone those, capture those, in the authoring tool, combine them, stitch them together, and make it look like the system is a production system before we've even gone through SIT, through UAT, and trained and developed any training content. Okay. This is that last slide was SAP. This one is Salesforce. It works on any technology basically that's rendered through a browser. So you can see here, I don't know whether you can see from the back, let's say we've taken a risk, we've captured some content, we now realize that the box was in the wrong place on the screen. With any other flat screen recording tool, back to square one, Photoshop, or it's re-record it. And don't forget, if you re-record a step in the middle of a process, the data no longer makes sense from beginning to end. So you have to re-record the whole process. With Assima, and this is not black magic, this is really how it works, you can drag and drop boxes, save it and republish. If we decided that the words on that box needed changing, we could change the words, save and republish. If when we had a drop-down list, we've missed something off the drop-down list, we can go into the database and add another item to the drop-down list, save it and republish. All of this before we've actually put a system live, okay? So imagine the benefit from an adoption perspective. I can send a link out to something that really technically does not exist. That's a bit meta, I guess, but send it to them and they can start playing with the system and giving us their feedback and get excited and motivated about what's about to happen to them. So, in Assima's own words, it's the only solution in the world that actually does this because of the patents that cover it. So, it really is immersive. It's hyper-realistic, the level of the simulations that you get off the back of Assima. You can create content way before the production system is even ready to go live, and you can run language packs over the content. So all I do is take a lesson that I've done for the UK, I'll save it as my Spanish lesson, then I'll run the translation pack and everything gets translated into Spanish. If our Spanish colleagues have a different product set, we can go into the back end of the solution and say, everything that was sold in the UK, it's these products that compare in Spain. So we can do find and replace and then publish Spanish content with Spanish product sets, okay? We can track everything. As I've just mentioned, we can create multiple data sets. And this last point is a real biggie. So it's a massive expense to set up and then maintain training environments, right? Typically, it runs for an SAP program, it runs into millions. There's a case study on the internet, NPower, I think, valued it at about £3 million over their 3-year program to actually set up and maintain a training program. I worked with one client just to set up the data set, £250,000. It's an expensive hobby. And you can't maintain that level of investment over time. So you typically use it for go live, and then a couple of months after go live, you trash it, everything is lost, okay? So I'm just going to finish on a business case for Assima and just challenge you again to think a little bit differently. So this is a bit naff, but training content is for life. It's not just for go live, right? So we invest an enormous amount of time, money and effort. Think about our training colleagues, think about all the people that have reviewed it, all of our SMEs, right? It's a massive, massive investment. And to throw it away when you throw your training material, your training environment away is criminal. But you have to look in the round of the total cost of ownership. So the costs clearly involved in this are buying and installing the software, the costs to capture the content. So the costs to capture are pretty similar to any other tool like Enable Now, Articulate, even PowerPoint. You have to go through a process, you have to capture screens. There's not much of an overhead in terms of capturing, you just have to wait, pause for Assima to recognize everything, tell you that it's finished. So it might add minutes, maybe an hour to a capture. There's a cost to authoring the content. This is really important. You do get from the clone a basic simulation, okay? But with all of this, you want to embellish, you want to enhance the content. There's also a cost pre-go live to edit based on fixes, right? So we've discovered a defect in UAT on our diagram. We've already captured the training content because we were feeling lucky. We now have to go back and edit it. If it's anything flat screen, Photoshop or re-record. Assima, open the clone, change, save, republish, okay? Probably what I ought to say as well, you don't just get the simulation, you get PowerPoint, so you get a Word document, you get PDFs, you get online help, anything, a series of radio buttons, you decide what you're going to output as. I've already touched on the cost of setting up and maintaining a training client, and then also the cost to translate and localize, and that means much more than language, that's actually data sets as well. And then finally, the cost to maintain that data over time and keep it current. My last point was adaptation, continuous improvement. How do we maintain our training content over time if we've only ever taken a snapshot of it a few weeks before we went live? So total cost of ownership must include maintenance. Otherwise, half of your training content, the half-life of your training content, I would say could be measured maybe more than weeks, but certainly in months before it's out of date. That's as much as I've got to say, and I'm not doing too bad on time. Has anybody got any questions or challenges for me? No? Stunned silence. Go for it.
Customers tend to factor in the extra time and staff have to invest to prepare all the data. And this isn't even how it's done. Or do the consultants just magically get all the information without the staff having to produce it?
Genuinely, in most cases, based on my experience, it's an afterthought. Training is an afterthought, change management is an afterthought. So what we're talking about here is an investment that most sensible organisations will make, but honestly, based on my experience over the last 25 years, it's an afterthought, and it's the first thing to get cut. We know this, being in a building where we're talking about learning and training and communications, it's the first thing to get cut off a programme, which is not very helpful. So we have to make sure that we get really good value for money out of what we actually spend our money on. Okay. Again.
Do you ever use a key user approach?
Oh yeah. So part of my background, I've over the last 25 years, and one of the things that we do, set up support for SAP, set up super user networks and key users. So all of that stuff, yeah, absolutely, we'd advocate that. And subject matter experts, part of that. We talk about global process ownership as well. So everything from global process owners to local process owners to super users, all of that part of the approach that we adopt, that we promote. Conscious of the time. Anybody got any? No? So I'll be over on the Assima stand. Clearly I don't work for Assima, but I'm very passionate about the product, so happy to field any questions. All right, thank you for your time. Cheers.